Hello Year 9, here is our 6th video on Lord of the Flies. I've chosen to ditch the PowerPoints and instead write it out on paper like I've been doing for the other classes, because it just means you can see it hopefully a lot more clearly than trying to read the glare from the PowerPoint. So our knowledge goal today is to analyse the significance of Piggy in the novel and what Piggy symbolises. So we're going to start as always with the vocabulary. So our old piece of vocabulary is totalitarian, always fun to say. Which we looked at last term when we were doing dystopia. So the question I'd like you to answer is, how is Jack presented as a totalitarian leader? So think about the evidence we have of the type of leader Jack is. If you want to push your answer higher or challenge yourself further, you could write about how Golding was influenced by presenting this type of totalitarian leader based on his experiences during World War II and his purpose behind writing the novel. So you can pause the video now and answer that. Our new word is cogent. Now, if someone is cogent, they're clear, logical, and convincing. So how has Piggy been presented as cogent throughout the novel? So think about how Piggy has been presented as clear, logical and convincing throughout the novel. Okay, so again you can pause the video and answer that question. So totalitarian then, Jack has basically been presented as a totalitarian leader throughout. Even before he was a leader, we had hints that these were the types of things that he wanted. He's someone that he says bollocks to the rules. He doesn't understand why voting should make any difference, because, you know, Ralph says, I'm chief, and Jack says, well, why does voting make any difference? You know, he clearly doesn't believe in democracy. We see that as a leader, he rules through fear, he rules through might, aggression. He only uses their respect and their fear of him as a violent hunter to keep them under control. We already see that he is prepared to torture boys that don't follow his rules, or just for the hell of it because he can. And we know that he led this sort of wild primal group murder essentially of Simon. So today we are going to focus on chapter 11, and we see that this, you know, is a real focus on Piggy, Ralph, Sam and Eric in comparison to Jack and the Hunters. But let's think about Piggy then. How has he been presented as cogent throughout? He has always been the logic and the calm behind Ralph's decisions. Ralph is the leader, but Piggy is the brains. Piggy is the only one that looks down at the children for behaving like a bunch of kids, for not focusing on being rescued. He's the one that, like Ralph, reminds everyone about the fire of being rescued, of trying to caution them against burning down half the island and then them starving to death. He has always been throughout the voice of reason, you know, this voice of clinging hold to civilization. And it's probably without Piggy, Ralph's leadership would have collapsed long before it actually did. So I'd like you to go then to chapter 11. Now, if you've been following the audiobook, then you can continue to follow the audiobook from where you got to yesterday, or you can just simply read your copy. So I'd like you to read the opening and stop when it says seeing him for the first time. So it's that first little section where we have Piggy, Ralph and Sam and Eric talking, basically. So I'd like you to read the start of chapter 11 and answer the question, how does Golding show Piggy, Ralph, Sam and Eric as clinging hold of civilization in this section? So how do we see just these 4 characters are all that are left of the boys trying to cling to civilization and hold on to that dream? Okay, so you can read that section of chapter 11, pause the video and then answer that question, please. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I would like you to then read the rest of chapter 11 once you've answered that question, okay? And I don't want you to move on to the questions on the back of this until you have read the rest of chapter 11, because it basically gives a great big spoiler that I hopefully haven't just done by wafting a bit of paper in front of the camera, okay? So after you've answered this question here, read the rest of chapter 11 before moving on with the video. Okay? No spoilers, because spoilers aren't good. Okay, I'm going to trust that you've read the rest of chapter 11 now. Poor Piggy. Poor Piggy. And again, we could argue that the foreshadowing of something like this happening with Piggy has been happening since the start of the book, but it's still really sad. So we've got 3 deaths so far. The boy with the birthmark that's burnt to death in chapter 2, the brutal mass murder of Simon, and then Roger's murder of Piggy in chapter 11. The capture of Sam and Eric, and Ralph left entirely by himself. So, how does this chapter develop your impression of Jack and Roger? It's interesting. Why have Roger the one that kills him, not Jack? How does Golding foreshadow the murder of Piggy? So think about the way the boys have treated Piggy, think about the way Jack has treated Piggy, but also think back to that moment, I believe it was chapter 5, when Roger was throwing the stones at the little boy and throwing to miss. How does that show this sadism, this sadistic urge has always been there in Roger? It's only been the threat of punishment in civilization that stopped him behaving like that. Think about in chapter 10, Roger's, again, sadistic glee at the idea of Jack being the sort of leader that will let him get away with this sadistic behaviour. So what is significant about Piggy's final speech? So think about this final speech that Piggy gives. What messages, wider messages, is Golding giving to us here? And what does the destruction of the conch symbolise? So now that the conch is shattered and broken just like Piggy, what does that now symbolise about what's happened on the island? And why is Piggy such an important character in the novel? What does Piggy himself symbolise? Okay? So, if you can just send me a picture of your answers to these questions. And then, of course, we have the work in the book on chapter 11. Now, we've only got a little page here. So if we can also, once we've answered the questions, complete this page in your workbook. Okay? So, remember, Thursdays is our silent reading, or, you reading for pleasure, and I hope that we are regularly reading at home anyway. If you need any book recommendations or anything, do please let me know, and I can put you in contact with lovely Pam. And then Friday, you should be focusing on your creative project. And I'm very excited to see your ideas and the outcomes of these creative projects as well. But you'll get an email tomorrow and Friday just to remind you of what you should be focusing on. So thank you so much to all of those people, which is the vast majority of my class. And I know, hopefully, people in the other classes that are watching this are really increasing the amount that they are sending into their class teacher. It's really important that we can see how you're getting on, check that you understand what you've been reading. Okay? Any questions, as always, let your class teacher know. Bye!